Two Chibok girls were freed in 1 week, the latest of which was Saturday. Does this give a ray of hope, or is it a pinch of salt in the lake? Here to speak on this is Bring Back Our Girls coordinator, Habiba Balogun. Habiba, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you. Two Chibok girls back to reality, back to life. We can't say that they were released because it looks like they basically, surfaced with their husband and then handed themselves over. How do you look at this development? Is this something to be cheery about?
I mean, for their families and for them, for their communities, for the parents of the girls who are still missing, who are still in captivity, they are really, celebrating. Because people have been telling us, what are you guys still advocating for after 7 years? These girls are never coming back. And we said, if they're never coming back, tell us, account for them, show us where they are. If you say they're never coming back, we will still keep fighting until they're all back or they're all accounted for. And you can see they're alive. That's true. And in fact, it's actually 3. One girl handed herself into the Nigerian army. Another one was found, Saraya. And then Hassana, again, was liberated and the army handed her over to the government. So this year, 2021, we've actually had 3 Chibok girls return. Wow. We now have 109 still in captivity, down from the 112 we've been shouting about for the past 3 years. Yeah.
So there's definitely a cause for celebration and definitely a reinvigorated sense of hope. But there is still a lot of sadness happening in the background. I'm sure you're well aware, the Christian Solidarity Worldwide Nigeria, that group, they've called for the prosecution of the men who married these girls while they were in captivity. And naturally, as sad as that may or may not be, they have been described as the husbands of these girls, as though none of us can say whether or not it was consensual, but what we do know is that these marriages and the children that have been born thereafter happened during captivity, while a lot of these girls were there against their will, at least initially. Yeah. Do you agree that these men who married these girls, these now women, in captivity should be prosecuted once they hand themselves over or are released?
I mean, honestly speaking, I'm not even going that far. So the girls were taken away from their families while they were in government custody. And I don't know about marriages. We know that from the reports, when they were in captivity, some of them were given chores to do, some of them were using as sex slaves, some of them were handed over to some men, for their exclusive use. So that word of marriage, I don't know what that is. Husbands, I don't think the man and his family petitioned their families to marry them. So there's no question for me of marriage. So you've got some Boko Haram militants or insurgents, whether they were conscripts or whether they were the leaders, who are now in government hands. Follow your process. Why are you talking about husband or not husband and so on? Of course, the families will have to deal with their own issues afterwards. But the first step is what the Borno State governor is doing, which is medical screening, rehabilitation, reuniting. There's a whole process that government has shown us that they're capable of carrying out. And it's not just for the Chibok girls. Remember, we keep on saying the Chibok girls are symbols, right? There are so many women, men, and other freed captives of kidnapping who have returned. They should also be taken through that whole rehabilitation process and be reunited with their families and their communities.
Are you satisfied with the sort of rehabilitation that happens to these girls when they return? And I agree with you totally that, there's no point debating the issue of whether they are coming back with husbands or something, because most of these guys treat women, young girls, as spoils of war anyway, and we can't, just like Adefemi said, we can't establish that, it was consensual. So, but when they return, and we have quite a few of them over time, what sort of processes do you think that they go through? And does Bring Back Our Girls have a way of monitoring and evaluating the sort of therapy, that is administered?
I can answer the second question first, which is, no, Bring Back Our Girls does not have any way of monitoring. Because, very sadly, our government has decided that Bring Back Our Girls are almost like, I don't know what to call it, adopted an adversarial position to Bring Back Our Girls. But what we do is we talk to the parents. And that's what we want. It's the parents and the girls themselves, because they're no longer girls, in fact, they're women. It's their parents and the girls themselves who should tell us whether they're satisfied or not. The process they go through is that when they're received, they get medical screening, they're put in a safe environment, they get psychosocial care, food, clothing, and so on. They put him back in education. Quite a few of them have graduated this year, both in the US and and even in Nigeria, from American University in Nigeria. Some have graduated. Many of them are still not free. So they've come out of captivity, but they're still being constrained in terms of their movement. But again, we are not there to dictate for them what their lives should be like. We are just there to make sure they regain the agency, what people like to call the agency. You having power over decision making in your own life. And I think this year we're planning to engage with the parents again and try to get the government fully re-engaged with the families and communities and be asking them those kind of questions and making sure they're responding to them. Yeah.
We're coming sadly to the end of our time with you here. The segment has flown by. I know we spoke in April around the 7-year anniversary, and you talked about the need for the government to stop looking at Bring Back Our Girls and the group and the supporters therein as adversaries. And sadly, it sounds as though that hasn't changed over time. When we look at the girls who have been released, initially when we woke up this morning, we thought it was just Ruth and Hassana, but it's also Saraya, as you said. Have you been able to establish any type of contact with the girls, their families, just to check in on their current well-being? Is there any update on that?
Yeah, so Bring Back Our Girls, the movement, we have members of the Chibok community. We have parents who are also members of Bring Back Our Girls. So through them, they're going through so much. It's not we are not the story, right? They are the story. So through them, we find out, what's going on, if we can support in any way. And again, I'll ask the government again, because we need to come together. There are so many parties that are ready to support, not just the Chibok girls, but people who have suffered. But they need it to be happening in a coordinated way, in a structured way. And until the government comes to the table and says, look, yes, you held us to account. Yes, you make us look bad when we're not doing well. By the way, that's the job of the citizen, right? Okay. But here we have these vulnerable people who have really suffered on behalf of all of us from this insurgency. And let's see what we can all do together. So that's my plea. Let's see what we can all do together, especially with all these Boko Haram repentant Boko Haram people surrendering. There's a whole peace-building process that is culturally appropriate for the Northeast. And we really need to make sure that, and I hear the governor of Borno State saying the right things, right? We need to make sure that the communities are involved and that justice plays a part in whatever reintegration process goes on. There has to be justice, otherwise we won't have lasting peace.
Habiba, Balogun?
That's a good one. We wish you at the very best. You've tried, but again, don't be adversaries of government. If that
we are not. We are not. In Lagos State, we cooperate very well with Lagos State government. We hope other state governments.
But not with federal government?
Well, federal governments. You've seen what happens, right? When we protest, yes. So we need them to adopt a different attitude. Thank you.
Best of luck to you. We hope that we will be talking to you very soon with more news that more girls have been released. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.